Reed Coverdale of the Naturalist Capitalist podcast, coming to us from an RV somewhere probably in the woods of New Hampshire. Am I right?
Yes, you're correct, in New Hampshire.
Okay.
How you doing, Al?
I'm good. Thanks for coming back on. All right, Reed. So this also pertains to New Hampshire and Tulsi. And I'm going to just read it. I saw this tweet. I'm just going to read it to everybody, and then we'll go from there. I didn't want to add unnecessary drama before Porkfest, but I was supposed to be Tulsi's liaison. You'll have to explain what Porkfest is in a little bit. First, her team called and said they wanted someone other than me. Then Tulsi unfollowed me on Twitter. Then she pulled out of the event a week before she was supposed to come. Needless to say, that bridge is burned. I wasn't given a concrete answer as to why. Last time we saw each other, things were friendly, and her team has been cordial to me right up until a couple weeks ago. So don't expect to see her on the podcast. I don't know if it's my criticism of her Baldock. Am I saying that name right? Reed?
By the way, you got some crazy echoing going on. I can hear what you're saying, but I don't know if you have the echo cancellation on your side. I just checked mine. It's on my side, but...
Oh, no. Shouldn't be echoing. Like, just right now, I'm echoing?
No, I'm hearing myself echo now.
Oh. That's not, I don't know. I don't hear you echoing. I'm wearing headphones. So I don't know. I'm on the external built-in microphone, yes, and headphones. Let me keep reading. Is it you hear yourself echoing all of a sudden and you didn't before we started the live stream? Bulldog, thank you.
I could hear you fine before we went live, but now it's echoing.
Is it going to drive you crazy? What if you take your headphones off when you answer questions?
Both of us echoing. Let me try without headphones.
Okay. Try without headphones and see what happens. Let me keep reading while you're doing that. I don't want to add unnecessary. Oh, wait, that's where I started. Okay. I don't know if it's my criticism of her Baldock endorsement, my political views being untenable for her to associate with. No idea. Either way, we're done. My advice is to never sacrifice your time or money for a politician unless you're ready to be a brainwashed sycophant. All right. So, I mean, that last line was what caught my eye because I thought it was interesting lesson learned. I have a couple questions. Like you say, you're not totally sure exactly what happened. So maybe she didn't ghost you and maybe it was her team's decision. Maybe it had nothing to do with her. Who knows? But I want to ask you this question. My advice is to never sacrifice your time or money for a politician unless you are ready to be a brainwashed sycophant. Tell me why that is your big takeaway.
So, Allison, I'm so sorry, but the echoing is so crazy. I can't even, like, I hear you, and then 3 seconds later, I hear you start talking again, and then 3 seconds after that, I can already hear myself talking again. So, I'm sorry.
Okay. Someone says, turn your headphone mic off. To you. Reed sounds like crap. Allison, okay. You have two mics on somewhere.
I don't have two mics on. I just have my built-in mic on.
You sound fine to me.
Yeah, hold on. Maybe you stopped. Can you hear me now? Fine. No.
Yeah.
There. Now it's repeating back to me again. I've got echo cancellation off. Yeah, I don't know. I have my internal mic on and my speakers, but if I turn them off, I still have the echoing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you want to take your headphones off and turn off all the volume of everything and just tell whatever you want to say about this situation, and then we'll end the live stream?
Sure. So I'm not sure if we just fixed the problem, but now I'm not hearing the echo. So anyway, basically, my biggest takeaway from this is, I actually like a lot of what Tulsi stands for. I like a lot of the stuff she says on Fox News. I like a lot of the points that she's made about our foreign policy and everything, but it just flies directly in the face of everything she stands for to come to New Hampshire and campaign for Don Baldock, who stands against everything that she says she stands for. Don Baldock wanted to go to war with Russia, with China, with North Korea. He wanted to perpetuate every conflict we have around the world. And for her to just come to New Hampshire, where she had gotten a lot of support from people like me, libertarian leaning people, and to tell us that we should support him was just a slap in the face. So I made a video about it and why I thought it was wrong of her to do that. And then following that, the next year we had Pork Fest, which is the largest libertarian festival in the world, and she was supposed to come speak. And so since I already knew her from the campaign in 2019 and 2020, they made me her liaison, and everything looked like it was fine. But then her team called back and said they didn't want me to be her liaison. And so I didn't make a stink about it because there was already some drama surrounding Port Fest and we didn't need to add anything. So I just kind of gracefully bowed out. But then she unfollowed me on Twitter at the same time, and then completely pulled out of the event. And in my opinion, we never got a really concrete answer as to why. She said it was about the reason for pulling out of the event was because her book deadline had been pushed up, but then she still was going to go to another event in New Hampshire, and she didn't cancel that until last minute too. But unfollowing me and, refusing to have me be the liaison in the first place, it was just kind of weird because I did spend a lot of time putting in signs and campaigning for her in 2019 and 2020. So, I like a lot of what RFK says while he's running right now. I like a lot of what some anti-establishment Republicans and Democrats say when they're running. I think that they're better than like the typical establishment Democrats and Republicans. But just remember, if you're donating money to a politician, that they're always going to be a politician and they're always going to do what's best for their career at the end of the day, even if it kind of flies in the face of everything that they say they're representing. So I would just recommend that everybody spend their money on themselves and bettering their own lives and bettering people around them instead of wasting it on a campaign when that politician is ultimately going to do whatever is best for them instead of best for you. Did that all come through clear?
Yeah. And how do I sound to you now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It's something with the headphones and the computer, so I think we got it figured out.
Okay, great. Yes. Well, so the reason that I wanted to bring you on to talk about it, because, some people, I even saw in some of the comments, people were like, is this just unnecessary drama? Is this just high school drama? There was somebody else in my locals community who I'm going to bring up some of their questions for you, kind of saying the same thing. But I thought it was interesting to me how I'm guessing anyway, so tell me if I'm wrong, your mind changed because here you were 2016, 2020, you're campaigning, you're knocking on doors, you're spending all this time and effort, you're like really believing in this, and now you're just like, I'm done. so regardless of whether it's Tulsi or somebody else that we're talking about, I just thought that was fascinating. And, I don't know, I guess I don't totally know how this applies to what I typically do, which is censorship, free speech issues, and media bias, except to say, I think I'm fascinated by how I think, like, hero worship people. I hear, controlled opposition constantly. This person isn't who I thought they were. They were controlled opposition. The way I kind of look at it is like, you should probably assume everybody to some extent is a controlled opposition, in the sense that everybody's got a bias. Everybody's got something. There's no perfect person out there. So just stop worshiping people. There's no sacred cow. Let it go and just see people for who they are. I tend to be pretty apolitical just because I think I have that viewpoint. And somebody else made a comment like, to get to the level Tulsi's at, or the level a lot of these politicians, you're almost like a corporation. You're not even a person anymore. You've gotten to the point where, like, you have all these handlers, you have all these, she might call out special interests, but like, what is a special interest? It's just an interest that, pushes you in one direction or another. She's got those too. So I'm just curious, could you tell me a little bit like about that transition from being somebody who was just like campaigning, door knocking, whatever. Now you're just like, whatever, I'm going to just live in my RV and I'm spending money on my barbecues. I'm not doing this stuff anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's certainly not all Tulsi's fault or anything like that. Like, I don't blame it all on her. I have changed a lot in it's been 4 years now almost since I worked on her campaign originally. So in 2019, I was a very pragmatic libertarian. So I thought we just needed to audit a lot of our departments, like the Department of Education, Department of Interior, Department of Transportation. Like, they're just too bloated, and we need to rein them in a little bit and have checks and balances. And 2020 just completely changed the way I look at politics. When we had those giant spending bills come through and 97% of Congress all voting yes on them, and seeing the public not react in an emotional way just really shocked me. And this is why I actually don't get butthurt about January 6th, because when January 6th happened, I was kind of like, finally something happened. Like, at least somebody's pissed about what's going on. And I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for him. I might this time just because I don't care anymore. But in when we had all these lockdowns and all these massive bailouts, and Congress was funding all these ridiculous pet projects through these stimulus bills and giving the people the scraps, and just seeing nobody give a shit, it just made me realize the country's lost. And maybe it's always been lost, maybe it's always been this way, but the idea that we have a representative government that represents us in Washington, D.C. when we vote for them, I mean, it's just complete bullshit. The special interests run this country, not the people. And every time we get somebody who we think is good or we think is going to fight the system, they either get ousted, they get impeached. Like, even Trump, he did the establishment's bidding 9 times out of 10. He almost always did whatever Mitch McConnell or John Bolton or whoever wanted him to do. And he might end up firing some of them at the end of the day. But the entire time that he had them in his cabinet, he was basically doing their bidding. And there was just a little bit of rebellion in him. And that was enough to get him impeached twice. And now they're trying to, they have indicted him and they're trying to make him a criminal for dumb stuff. And they can't go after him for the actual evil stuff he did because they're all implicit in the same crimes. So basically, my mind is just completely shifted about politics. Like, it's not about getting a good person in there to change the system, because the system will not allow good people. And getting good people into politics doesn't make politics better. It just makes those good people worse. The longer they're in there, the worse they get. So my recommendation to people is, like, don't get involved in politics. Basically, don't join a campaign and don't give your money to politicians. It's just a waste of time. Like, worry about yourself and your family and your friends and try to better yourself in that way, instead of wasting your time trying to get someone into a system that won't allow change in the first place.
Putin's shirt here in the chat. Nobody is apolitical. What does that even mean? Every aspect of our lives is political in one way or another, which is just to say that being political means you're a member of the polity. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think, yeah, politics has gotten to the point where it does affect our lives. It never has. I mean, like, people 10 years ago who were apolitical are forced to care about things now. But I think, the fight for those things isn't really with getting candidates into office, at least at the federal level. I mean, I think if you are going to care about politicians who are running, you should care who's going to be running for sheriff, who's going to be running for mayor, who's going to be running for governor in your state. Those are much more important elections that actually change your day-to-day life. And if you have a state like New Hampshire that kind of pushes back against the federal government, like here in New Hampshire, we've nullified all gun laws from the federal government. So if there is an assault weapons ban, none of the law enforcement in New Hampshire have to enforce that law. I think that's a lot more effective than getting on Robert F. Kennedy's campaign or some libertarian who's running for president. Like, I mean, I think the only value that those things have is drawing attention to the issues and getting people to start caring about their own lives and their own localities more. But I think as long as people still have this mentality that, okay, there's eventually going to be enough news coverage and enough popularity with these Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, Ron Paul type candidates, whatever, that will finally break through and will actually bring this system crashing down from the top down. I don't think that is, I don't think that's plausible. So, I mean, yeah, I guess nobody's truly apolitical, but try to focus on where it actually makes a difference to you.
Mm-hmm. I guess you're right. Yeah. And to that person's point, I mean, so there's that Wendell Berry quote, eating is an agricultural act. And I may misread the meaning in it, but what I have understood him to have meant is there's change making or politics, whatever you want to call it, in your day-to-day life. And like, he was very focused on farming and converting farming to a better way. And so what his point was that, you know, your choice of eating is the change for the agricultural system. Eating is an agricultural act. So we overlook just our very day-to-day choices. And here we are, not to say necessarily that it's, you shouldn't like care about, I guess, what the, you know, the EPA is bought off by Monsanto. But if you just don't buy Roundup, you know, if nobody buys Roundup, then it doesn't exist anymore. You know, you don't buy food that's been sprayed with Roundup, it doesn't exist anymore. And so that was kind of his point. I guess that's the way I look at it. My actions, and maybe that makes me political in my day-to-day activities where I choose. But I tend to be someone who, you know, even if I do vote, I'm not like sitting there going, oh, I'm not like watching the TV until 2:00 in the morning, you know, hoping that my candidate I don't know. It just hasn't been that way. Okay. Hey, Reed, are you still a wine drinker? Because we got to do that real fast. Still a wine drinker.
Oh yeah, sometimes a little bit. Yep. My
Sometimes.
friend in Georgia has a great blueberry winery.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, you can't get Reed's friend's blueberry wine here, but you can get some other amazing Malbecs from Argentina at AllisonWinePromo.com. I have people like stopping by and saying hi to the horses outside right now. So I hope they're not, I hope it's not a heist. I hope they're not coming to steal the horses. I'll have to leave in a second, Reed, if they do. Anyway, you just never know out in the wild west of Florida where we live now. We had this guy like peering over our fence, like kind of trespassing the other day, and our neighbor saw it. He's like, "You're gonna get shot, dude, if you keep doing that." So some new neighbors in town. I can't do what you used to do. Anyway, AllisonWinePromo.com, y'all. Get some amazing Malbecs. I don't know what the next holiday is. Labor Day? Not sure. But I am hearing myself read, so I don't know if the audio problems came back. It's not that bad, but I do hear a little bit of myself. Anyway, don't forget, y'all, support my work. AllisonWinePromo.com. Get a great glass of wine, especially if you've given up on politics or whatever you believe about politics, or you don't think apolitical is even possible, or whoever you are. You can be a wine. That's Allison Wine. Get it? A wine. All right. Apolitical, a wine. Go get yourself AllisonWinePromo.com. 50% off the wine itself, 50% off shipping, and it's extremist altitude wine. So if you're an extremist, you don't want to go to federal prison, this is a great way to start. Also, if you want some coffee, go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. Light roast, dark roast. I have the espresso every morning with my raw milk latte. It's very good. You can also get tea. There's Katura tea. It's the tea that goes around the coffee fruit. All USDA certified organic. High altitude roast as well, extremist altitude. Everything's an extremist here, including Reed, right? Because we're going to go to the comments now from locals. If you want to go to locals and join my editorial board, AllisonMar.locals.com. Read the first question for you, all right, from one of my supporters. Let's go all the way down. I like Tulsi, this is Brisbane, but I am undecided about her. She seems to have principles. So did you going to social media instead of asking her directly piss her off enough to slam the door on you? She doesn't seem like the type that's afraid to defend herself or admit she's made a mistake.
I don't. So this is all after the fact, the social media stuff, or unless she's talking about the video. But I didn't really have an opportunity to talk to her. We tried when she endorsed Don Baldick. Actually, like 10 of us libertarians sneaked into the Don Baldick event, and we just because she was there with him, and it was advertised as a town hall, so we all wanted to ask her, hey, Tulsi, why should we vote for this guy when he sucks? And then name all the things he sucks on and see what she said. But Don Baldick's campaign manager actually noticed a lot of us coming in, and he actually came down and sat down next to me and said, hey, we're glad you're here, but we're not going to tolerate any shenanigans, basically. And I said, that's okay. I'm just here to ask a question. This is a town hall, right? And he said, yep. And I said, okay, well, I won't have any outbursts or anything. And this was right around the time that those guys ambushed AOC, not ambushed, but verbally ambushed her during her, whatever it was. She was having a speech, I forget, somewhere. I met the guy who did it in DC. But so everyone was kind of nervous that this type of thing was going to happen here too. And I said, nope, we won't say anything until it's question time. And so then Tulsi got up and spoke, and then Dawn got up and spoke, and then they both just went out the back door, and we never got to ask any questions. So I did try to go ask her up front, and then I've been trying to get her on my show to ask her about this stuff up front too, and I've just been constantly blown off. So I don't know, maybe she is pissed that I said stuff on social media, but I certainly tried to get to her directly.
Matt, who's seen here, who is working on videos about, and I think a new documentary about election integrity. We have an election integrity issue to deal with, even in local races. Tabulator results are never being double checked. I'm all for voting, but we have to be sure it's real. All of a sudden now you are allowed to talk about this sort of on YouTube. I don't know why. But I also understand why people feel like it's also a waste of time, because, you know, like, how do you even know that, how do you even know the election is going to be run fair and square? And of course you're crazy if you even ask that question. Okay, let's go back to locals. Unless you want to say anything about the election integrity issue.
I'll just say I think a lot of the things that people have been talking about have been a distraction. Like I saw in New Hampshire in 2022, the Democrats won handily in all the federal races, and it's because they were busing people to the polls to legally vote. So there's a lot of people talking about like, oh, just millions of ballots being printed in the middle of the night and all this weird stuff, where I think they should be focusing on if you're a college student in New Hampshire, but you have a driver's license from Arizona, why should you be allowed to vote? All you need is a residence in New Hampshire, and then you can legally vote, is I believe how it works right now. And that's something we should be talking about more. Like, why do Democrats win so easily? Why are they so able to get all these people to the polls where the Republicans or whoever else just kind of sit back? And, you know, they were doing it. They did this in 2020, and then they were doing this again this time. In 2020, all the Republicans were always saying Trump's going to win in a landslide. Trump's going to win in a landslide. And then he didn't. Where the Democrats, they were churning the media campaign. They were getting people out. They were getting the mail-in ballots out to people. You know, they were like really putting the groundwork in, and they did again in 2022. And so as long as the Republicans are always just blaming it on anomalies or whatever, instead of, hey guys, we really need to get our foot in the game like the Democrats have, I don't think anything will change.
You do make a good point that, for instance, that Time magazine article that was titled something like how a cabal saved democracy or something in 2020, and everyone was freaking out because, like, wow, they're bragging about stealing an election, but in their minds they're like, we saved it, which really is a really fascinating look at how two people can see things totally differently. Like, no, we saved you. And you're like, wait, you're totally controlling everything we do. It's not saving, it's killing, it's hurting. Like, what are you doing? And it just goes, we do seem to have that polarity right now in the United States. And anyway, you're right. Like, everything they did that they talk about in that Time magazine article is totally legal. But like everything from, well, I don't know if it's totally legal. The censorship thing, I don't know if we'll see that worked out in court over time. But from the owning the media to all the things you just talked about, there doesn't necessarily have to be anything illegal going on when you're the big guy in town. You own everything. You own the messaging. You own the infrastructure. You don't have to break the rules because you make them. So I don't know. I do think, you make a good point. Sometimes the other stuff, you're right, can be a distraction. And it's like, no, there's all this stuff that we could focus on that's like right in plain sight, that's not being addressed. Okay, KM says, I have several questions, but limited to two. If you haven't already, please explain how someone with a public longstanding call out to Tulsi Gabbard is made her liaison for PorcFest, if nothing other than to troll her or derail her attendance to the meeting. And what are your issues with Jimmy Dore?
I don't know where the Jimmy Dore thing comes from.
I don't either.
I mean, I'm sure I've criticized him in the past over stuff, but he's not someone I particularly take issue with. As far as like, yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. And like I said in the Twitter thread, I don't blame her for not wanting me to be a liaison. It's just the point that you can't criticize politicians for being hypocrites and expect to maintain any sort of relationship. So that's why I said, don't bother investing your time in a politician unless you're ready to be a brainless sycophant, which lots of people are, in order to maintain those bridges. In every political space I've been in so far, I've always just said what I thought, and sometimes it pisses people off and sometimes it burns bridges, but I don't understand what I would add as being another guy who just kind of climbs the ladder and says stuff and always walks on eggshells around people, because that's what everybody does. So, I don't really want to do that. I want to just call the shots as I see them. And if people get pissed and don't want to associate with me anymore, then that's fine.
Okay, Jonathan C. This feels like some high school drama. Are we in an episode of 90210? I wish we were. That was one of my favorite shows growing up, which it shouldn't have been. I don't know why anyone let me watch that. Trash TV. Reed, man, you publicly call her out and then wonder why she goes you serious. I get it. She's cute. And those 30-something meetups, promising, no doubt, but seems like you need to move on. Ouch.
No, I mean, I think I said this in the tweet thread, but I am moving on. I mostly made the tweet because it's a long appearance that people have been anticipating on the show, and it's not going to happen. So I was letting them know why, and just trying to put it to bed and move on. You can confirm that I didn't ask you to come on about this. You actually called me and said, "Hey, Reed, would you come on and talk about this?"
Yeah.
So I definitely don't plan to make an eternal thing out of it. It was more just, it was kind of a closure to it. Like, this is why I don't think anyone else should make the same mistakes I did about politicians in general, not just her specifically. Yeah, I am moving on.
And frankly, the reason that I thought it would be interesting to talk about is because of the bigger picture, not really because of like the specific background on like what may or may not have happened. Because once again, Tulsi's campaign didn't even tell you specifically if they're mad at you, and who knows who even runs her Twitter account. Like, you're like, she unfollowed me, but maybe it's not even her account. Maybe it's her campaign manager. I had this lady who was supposed to come on and talk about 5G. This was like, I don't know, 2 years ago. And I'm in the thick of COVID at this point. I'm interviewing all these censored doctors. And here I am thinking I'm taking a risk on the 5G scientist, because now I'm really going down the rabbit hole and people are going to see my channel and they're like, wow, she talks about the vaccines and she talks about 5G. Like, she must be totally nuts. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it because I'll talk to anybody. I'm going to do it. One of my supporters, like, they get to put in interview requests. So they asked for her. So like, okay, I'm going to have her on. She was very affiliated with kind of the Clinton camp, I guess, and like in the environmental world. And so I got a call from one of her PR people the morning of, like an hour before we were supposed to go live. And they asked me if I was an anti-vaxxer because she didn't want to be associated, or the campaign, her people don't want her to be associated with an anti-vaxxer. And they totally canceled the interview. Now, I have no idea if she even knew that happened. I don't know if she even knew we were supposed, her name was Deborah Davis. You can find her on YouTube. If you're interested, she knows a lot about 5G. You can find videos of her, but she never came on because, like, I guess she had a public relations person who was just very concerned about how that was going to look. And like I said, I don't even know if it was her. And so in this case, you don't even know if it's Tulsi. I mean, it could be somebody else who was like, you know what? It's not going to be good for her image to be associated with Reed for some reason, one reason or another. And maybe she didn't even know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's all fine. But again, the point still stands, regardless of what happened or who's running that, or the end result is the same. So like, and I'm way more upset about her endorsing Dawn Baldick than not coming on my show or not coming to Porkfest or whatever. That just sucks when someone does that. Like, I was a Rand Paul supporter in 2016, and when he voted for Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State after threatening to block his nomination, it was just a shot to the gut. And I feel like that type of stuff should be called out, especially when it's the people you support. If Gavin Newsom does something horrible, I mean, it's like, yeah, no shit, he's Gavin Newsom. Of course he's going to. He sucks. But if it's somebody that we have vocally supported or given money to or told other people to support, when they do something that flies directly in the face of the values they claim to represent, I think they should be called out for it.
Okay. Magpie says, Tulsi is a politician, and politicians say things and agree to things they do not actually intend to follow through on. This is a learning moment for Reed. Actions count far more than words. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. I generally, Stoop Dog, I don't support Democrats or Republicans. The two-party system is bankrupt. But I did give her campaign a small donation. I was completely disillusioned when she endorsed Joe Biden. She seems to have become an opportunist and strayed away from her previous platform. Ultimately, I think she's a dedicated warrior. Maybe that is the problem. And then F6B Chris, no questions, just a reply to the comment about becoming a brainwashed sycophant. I donate to politicians because they are either in line with my values or in the ever-increasing case, they are the counterweight to another politician who is 180 degrees away from my values, not for any quid pro quo. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think that's fine. You know, I obviously donated to her too. But I mean, you can give money to politicians if you want to, but I feel like a lot of people, instead of having principles, you know, being anti-war, being anti illegal surveillance or anti-censorship or whatever, they find a person that they want to latch onto, whether it's Trump or Tulsi or Bernie Sanders or Biden or who, you know, whoever it is, and they will cling to that person and protect them at all costs and always align themselves with them instead of doing what that person is saying and trying to find a set of principles that you believe in. And then if people happen to line up with those principles, you give them support. That's what I've done since, you know, like 2015. That's how long I've been a liberty leaning person. And I supported Rand Paul and then Gary Johnson and then Tulsi Gabbard and then Joe Jorgensen. And now I'm just done. It's just a waste of time. So I'm probably just going to vote for Trump because fuck it. Yeah, I think, you know, if you are, if you're looking for politicians to be consistent all the time, the only guy who really did that was Ron Paul, and he's retired.
Somebody in the chat wants to know if you're familiar. I got to get back to StreamYard so I can open Viva and Robert Barnes. Are you familiar with them, the legal duo?
A little bit, not really. But
I don't know why they were wondering though that. Okay, last one. This is a little longer. When Tulsi first came out with her perfect video denouncing the Democratic Party, I says to myself, she is so practiced. My gut was saying, watch, wait, and see. I sensed a Jekyll and Hyde. As long as there is a competent man running for president, I will never vote for a woman. In scripture, King Lemuel was warned by his mother to be wary of the wiles of women. Scripture addresses women being manipulative. The fact is we are. So use manipulation for good. It's okay to entice your kid to use the potty with M&Ms, LOL. It is not bad to desire the presidency if you seek it for good and not some evil agenda. We have a beautiful constitution. If only it was cherished, but because it isn't by most government officials, we're in deep doo-doo. I don't know what Tulsi's motives are, but she should not be avoiding anyone. One would think Tulsi would want exposure on his podcast. Of course, this is only one story. My ears and eyes are still open for careful discernment, but not for the president of the United States. She is not, as far as I know, I haven't heard that she's running for anything. Are you familiar with that? I haven't heard her say she's going to run for anything.
She is. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of early in the game still, but also kind of late for if she wants to switch parties and run for something, which I think she'd have to do at this point. And I mean, maybe she could run with Kennedy. I don't know. Like, I have no clue what. I mean, when I was on her campaign, we had no idea what she was going to do the next day. Like the Hillary, you know, suing Hillary Clinton and all that crazy stuff she did, which was awesome. It came out of nowhere. You know, it's just like, what? Like, you know, just we never knew what her next move was going to be. So now trying to guess would be ridiculous. I have no clue. You know, I do think that that person's right about the video that came out about the Democrats. Like, everything she said about the Democrats is correct, but she called them a cabal of elitist warmongers, I think was the wording she used. And then she endorsed not just Don Baldock, but also Chuck Grassley, who led the motion in the Senate to condemn Russia and support Ukraine. You know, so it's just like, what? Like, I mean, 100%. The Democrats suck. They're a rat-infested, disgusting, warmongering disaster. But I mean, a lot of the Republicans are too. I mean, Lindsey Graham is no better than Joe Biden. It's just the other side of the coin, and you know, the same deal. So, to act like any of these, you know, to act like there's a strong difference between the Democrats and Republicans when it comes to federal elections is just a joke. And I feel like, you know, she was being really deceptive with that whole bait and switch, because it was literally like 2 days later, or it might have even been the day after, I forget, but it was very soon after she put that video out that she endorsed Don Baldock and then came to New Hampshire and campaigned with him for a couple days. It's just like, wow, okay. And I mean, you can go look up the videos of Don. He was not ashamed of being a warmonger. He was angry that Joe Biden wasn't doing enough in Ukraine and was saying that we need to go after China because they're going to look at what we've done in Ukraine and take initiative to go after Taiwan, and we can't have that happen, and we need to go after rogue nations like North Korea and Iran. And so it wasn't like he was a closeted warmonger. It was mask off, I would say.
Okay, Reed, before you go, where can people follow you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, so I myself have actually stepped back from politics quite a bit. I haven't done a show in a couple months, and I've only been putting one a month out this year. I used to do like 2 a week. So one thing that I was really invested in last year was trying to get people to call their congressional representatives and demand that they support the resolution to end the war in Yemen. And that was something that I pushed like all year long. And then the day came when it was supposed to be introduced, and Bernie Sanders just cucked out and didn't even bring it to the floor. And so that really made me rethink things even more than I had throughout all of 2020. We had the elections of 2022 where the Democrats still did pretty well after they locked the country down and, destroyed tons of people's lives. Nobody cared. And then we pushed for months and months and months to end this awful blockade and starvation campaign that's going on in Yemen. And we can't even do that. So I actually did a little self-reflection and thought, how many hours have I talked about the war in Yemen? How many hours have I screamed at the wall on the computer, just talking about this stuff that I ultimately can't do anything about. And everyone who listens to me really can't do anything about it other than call their congressional representative. So I've decided to invest more in my own life lately and encouraged other people to do the same. So if you're a political activist, but you don't have your bills paid, if your familial relationships are a mess and you're trying to tell other people how to live, it's really hypocritical. So just try to work on yourself. But the next time I do put a podcast out, it'll be on the Naturalist Capitalist, which is on YouTube, ODYSEE, Spotify, all that.
Have you ever had anything pulled down? I can't remember if we've ever talked about any censorship issues over there.
I have. I think I've had 2 videos taken down. And one of them was immediate. It was in 2021. And we were talking about election interference, which is funny because maybe I should appeal that one again. Maybe I can get it back.
Yeah, right.
And then the other one was like 2 years after the fact. And it was because we were talking about the things you poke into your arm that I think you still can't talk about on YouTube. So, yeah, I think I've lost 2, and I haven't gotten. Actually, I did lose my channel for a day. I woke up and my channel was gone, and I got a message that they had suspended the channel, and so I appealed the decision, and they gave it back. So I have it back again.
All right. So yeah, there you go. The Naturalist Capitalist. Rusty says the state can take your property, crush your body, but it cannot touch your heart or soul. That is what it means to be apolitical. On that note, are there anything you want to share about how you say like you're investing in your life? Does the RV have something to do with that?
Yeah, so I was, I really believe in living within my means. I make a lot of money. I make well over 6 figures a year, but I was going to be dumping like $2,000 a month into rent when I don't really need to. So I thought, why not buy a camper for 10 grand, and in 5 months it will have paid for itself. And then I can save that money to put toward buying land and building my own house.
Good for you.
So I guess the inspirational note I'll leave on is if you're spending excessive money that you don't need to, try chopping that spending out and putting it towards savings for something important.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. And on that note, 2 ladies Midwest adventures. Allison, can we get a quick update on your goat adventures from your other channel? My daughters are very curious. Yes, if you are not following our Off British Living channel, the link's in the description of the video and the pinned comment, so go check it out. We have 2 goats that we inherited with the property we are on in Florida. They're females. We have no idea what breed they are, except we know they're small. We want to breed them so we can get milk. We already drink a lot of raw goat's milk. Our kids drink a lot of raw goat's milk, and we drive 90 minutes to get it right now. It's a long drive. It's expensive, and we have 2 goats right outside. So I figured, you know what? Why not try? But the problem is because they're small, you can't just breed them with any goat. So we just recently went to go find some bucks, as they call them, and they were too big. But I got an email today. A small Nigerian dwarf goat has been, injured by a dog. However, because of the injury and being sent to a place for recovery, they found out about me. So we might end up inheriting another animal that hopefully isn't worthless and can breed with our goats. And so then we can have our milk. So that's the latest for our homestead. We're moving in the direction of becoming goat milk farmers, and we're very excited about it. If my husband's watching this, he doesn't know any of that last thing I shared. So found a buck. So get excited about that. We're going to start breeding the goats. If this guy makes, I think he's okay. I don't think it's a life-threatening injury, but anyway, but because of the dog attack, that my friend who knows we're looking for a goat found out that we needed one, and that this one fits the size of our female. So hopefully that'll all work out. So thank you everybody who watches over there. Reed, I totally agree with you on the money thing. There's nothing like financial freedom. It makes you free for a lot of other stuff. Like one of the things you're talking about when you're saying politicians, are greasing each other's wheels. Obviously there's social, what do you call it? Credit, right? I mean, we talk about that a lot. You get social credit. So it's not all just financial, needing to scratch each other's backs. However, there is a huge amount of finances that I think gets involved in that too. And think about how different the last couple of years would have been with mandates and whatnot, if people could have just been like, screw it, I'm going to quit, and I don't have to worry about money because I lived well under my means for several years and I have a huge amount in savings, and I'm just going to live on my savings for a little bit until I find something else. But unfortunately, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and there's just no way to do it unless you stop spending and I know it's tough nowadays with inflation and everything, but if you're uncomfortable for a little bit, like, I don't know if where you're living is as nice as your other apartment, but it's probably fun. I don't know, probably an adventure at the very least.
Yeah, I lived out of a 1994 Toyota pickup driving around the country for a couple of years, so anything's an upgrade from that.
Yeah, totally. All right, Reed Coverdale, thanks again. Thanks everybody for watching. Tuesday I have Simon Ativa coming on. He's the White House correspondent who has a tumultuous relationship with Karine Jean-Pierre. That's an understatement. And so I guess one of their arguments got wiped from the White House archive. So he's going to come on and talk about that. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.